quick introduction about myself and about the company I work for. I'm Itamar, the VP Strategy for Glispa and the GM Israel, many years in mobile and in marketing. Glispa is a global mobile marketing company. What is unique about Glispa is two main things. One is we're truly global with 7 offices in the world, employees from 50 different nationalities, and we run campaigns with almost every country in the world. Second, we're truly invested in the technology part with our own API and SDK for direct publishers, our data platform, and our tech operation. Okay, so today, a person on average is almost 3 hours inside his mobile apps every day. That's 8 years of one's life. And a person that would be born today actually will be almost 12 years of his life. Another proof for what's going on in mobile is the difference between desktop versus a smartphone down the road. Today, people are so invested in the mobile devices that it's just the main channel we see for audiences. Now, on the one side, there is 4,000 new apps every day released on the main stores. But then on the other side, people don't want to install apps anymore. So 65% of the people don't install new apps, and only 2% install more than 8 apps a month. So on the one side, there's more apps, but then people don't want any more apps. And not only that is happening, advertisers want to increase their invest in mobile. They want to increase their mobile user base, but the users don't want to install the apps. Few things are a reason for this phenomena. One, users are concerned about data. What data does the advertiser collect? What they do with it? What's the privacy issue about it? And also a lot about the user experience. So intrusive ads is one, an ad that is not relevant in terms of the content I want. But second, it's not relevant in terms of the ad format. And a main indication is ad blocking. 70% of the people on mobile web use ad blocking. And that's an indication that something is wrong in this ad tech space. Because people need the ad blocker to navigate in the mobile world. Because again, targeting is not good enough and the ad format is not relevant. So instead of having a win-win-win, what we have here is a loss-loss-loss. Because advertisers don't target their main target audience, the users will really bring them ROI and value. The publishers lose ad revenue because they use ad blocking and lose a lot of money on the table. And the end user has a bad user experience. A good example is the website Forbes.com. If I'm using an ad blocker, I can't actually insert the site, both the mobile app and both the desktop version. So, and not only that, but advertisers want to learn better who are their users. But on the one side, they use very basic ways to learn about them. They don't use sophisticated and advanced technologies for really understanding who are the users. And second, what they're trying to do is to use social login and Facebook login as a way to learn about it. But because people are afraid from privacy and data, people don't really want to do a Facebook login. So actually what the app developer does, he does a very long onboarding process for a sign up. So eventually the end user will do a Facebook login, just because it's a very uncomfortable process. So again, the user experience is very, very bad here. And then if different people from very different verticals see the same ad, which is not relevant to most of them, it's another proof and indication that something needs to be recalculated here. And then the question is, how can we really learn who are our users and build this win-win-win situation? So one, it's about a user-centric approach. Instead of looking on the advertising as advertising for a device, look on it as the person behind the device. And that's the main concept of persona-based marketing. Track the information from the device and really understand what's going on there. Because the amount of data generated every second on our device says a lot about us. So what technologies can really help us to do this action? One, machine learning. Machine learning is basically a technology to help predict actions from previous data. From a sample of data to understand what is the next to happen. To help a computer to take decisions. Deep learning, this is the interesting one because I was struggling with how to define it, but the best way would be machine learning on steroids, because that's really the next version, the advanced way to really speed up and use data, represent it in a different way to really learn your users. And unfortunately, we don't have time to really dig into how to implement these technologies. But one, I would encourage you to check these technologies. And second, I'll be here after the lecture and we can speak a bit more about it. Computer vision. This is the world of helping a computer to understand what he sees. So if we'll take a picture, as people, we can generate a lot of information about it. How many people are in the picture, what's their approximately age, gender, some things about them. Helping a computer to understand the same thing, this is another way to learn a lot about the users. But here we need to be very careful with privacy. And privacy, one is different between the countries. So the solution is per country here. But the concept is that this is a really, really, really good way to learn your audiences. And then with these technologies, we want not only to learn what users like, but also what they don't like. Because if a user sees the same ad for 5, 6, 7 times, maybe that's a hint that we should change a bit the kind of ads we want to serve to him. This is an important slide of what we can learn from 4 different places. User info. We should focus on understanding his interests, and not only basic stuff as his gender. But then on the device info, we can also learn a lot from his operating system, his manufacturer, and what model he's using. And leverage it to the more interesting places, for example, apps. In Android, I can see what apps are installed on the device. In iOS, I can check if a specific app is installed. From what apps a user first installed, second uninstalled, third is actually using, and on what base, we can really understand a lot about and try to predict what this user would want. And sure, we should go deeper with image recognition and understanding from the face information. And one thing really interesting about this topic is the connections are not intuitive. For example, we saw that people that do more selfies, then there's a few things we can tell about these people. And actually, from a very measurable place, actually use it. So as a person, if we think about it, I don't see the connection between doing more selfies versus wanting to consume more kind of specific apps. But that's where machine learning and deep learning can help us and help with the human limitations of how we tackle information. And then this all comes up to the persona topic. How can we use these advanced technologies to build personas and to serve for each persona a different ad experience? Yes, it will be a bit hard to serve every person in the world a different experience, but at least let's personalize per the persona. A big issue with companies trying to tackle this topic is building too much personas, because on the end of the day, you need to check if each one of the personas makes sense from one, what's the maintenance and what's the work on my side versus what's the optimization I can do. So I would encourage you to start with a relative small number of personas, and then down the road, increase it. For example, if you see on a specific persona that two kind of people, two groups in the same persona act a bit different, that's a good indication to split this to two different personas. Now, it's important to say, all this lecture is we're speaking about personas and then targeting. But without the ad format, it just can't work. Because if I'm serving the right ad to the right person on the right time, but with a very bad ad format and experience, it will not be good enough. So here is an example of a persona. Tech savvy or night owl are good examples. Sure, each persona can have different gender, different ages, and different interests, but there is something common about these people. And then we can think, what would this kind of person would want to see as his experience? And not only about what ad to serve him, also the frequency. How many ads to serve him, when to serve him the ads. There's a big topic between user acquisition, showing him a new app, versus retargeting. Take an app he currently uses just and promote that so he would use that app more. And that's a big issue retargeting, because take a company like Zynga, right? I would assume most of the people that have a smartphone saw at least 3, 4, 5 times their ads. Is it exciting for that user to see it for the 6th or 7th time the same ad, even if it's a different ad format, versus to focus on users that really want and use this app and optimize them to use it more? Let's think about privacy a bit, because privacy is a big issue with this persona. There's something very scary about persona, that the app developers know really who we are. This is a very interesting survey by Tune. 30% of the people think that app developers don't take any data at all, while 21% think that they take more than what they really take. So this is a bit controversial how people see it. And the way I interpreted this survey is that there is a lot of buzz about vendors and app developers taking your data and using it. So people don't know exactly how and what is happening, just that people are speaking about data that is collected. And around privacy policy, I would encourage a few things. One, be super transparent about what data you take. What are you doing with this data? Give them an option to out if they're not interested in that. And don't take information that is identifiable for a specific person. So it's okay to have in a specific persona device number XXX, I don't know what, as far as there is no connection to the user behind it. One, it's illegal. And second, privacy problems come from exactly this place, when people are scared that the app developers know about them in person, which is not needed to serve a good ad experience, right? Fraud. Fraud is a huge deal. Ad fraud is estimated around $7 billion a year. And persona can be a really good way to tackle it. Because if advertisers will be more and more targeted in terms of who is their audience and what exactly they want to serve, fraud will decrease. Because fraud exactly sits on the places when the transparency is low, the understanding of the flow is not complete. And fraud is one of the major problems in the industry today. And then with the persona, we can build again this win-win-win instead of the loss. Advertisers will build personas with no information about the user in specific, so they can serve ads relevant to their target audience with a good experience. So the publisher will not need to use an ad blocker. Take again revenue on the table. The user can have a good user experience. And that's exactly the win-win-win we want and should create here. You know, all this lecture sounds very easy, right? Because just let's take the data and use it. But I wanted, before I finish, to tell you that it's like finding a needle in a haystack. There is so much information out there. It's really hard to decide what information is really relevant for building this persona and understanding of the users. Because 99.9% of the information has zero information to tell us. A lot of information about in-app activity says nothing. For me, it's important to understand if a user likes a specific app, how many times in specific he uses that app, and what exactly screens he likes or dislikes. In most cases, they will not really tell us a lot. So the main problem here with companies trying to tackle this issue is that they're trying to use too much data because they think that more data can help us to be more accurate, while that's not really the case. So that was my short presentation about why I feel persona-based marketing can take this industry to the next level. One, if you have questions, I would love to answer, and if not, enjoy the show.
So what do you think about the whole Pokemon Go and the data that they're amassing, I should say, as of recent? Because they ask for email authorization.
What
access
company?
To your photos. Pokemon.
You know, Pokemon is an interesting one because on the stores, it's not, there's no official version. So what happened is that people download Pokemon Go from an alternative market. And that's really, really, really problematic in terms of there is no, nobody knows, or there is no supervision on the data there. I can tell you, every person using this Pokemon Go from alternative markets really is giving up all his information, even information that is about the user, because there's no regulation outside of the Google Play. If it's in the official store, yes, there's more regulation. Still, you can take whatever you want, but it's harder to do that. So I would catch Pokemons only on the official stores.
So I was wondering, what do you think of data when it comes to user acquisition, and what are the dangers of it, and what can be the advantages as well? I mean, obviously everyone's spending a lot of money into acquiring users, but I was wondering what kind of practical examples you can think of where it can be a benefit to acquire users through data, and when it can be dangerous.
First, one main problem with these big brands is that they have no clue, in most cases, about the users, and the vendors that are helping them with user acquisition actually know a lot more about them, which is already problematic because as an app developer, you should own your own data, have your own technology with your data platform, and understand what is your next step. So that's number one. But then the main thing about data is if, for example, an advertiser has a specific CPI or CPX model for acquiring users, this number is calculated as, for example, let's split it by gender. Women are 20% more relevant for me than men, so I agree to pay $4 for women, $2 for men, so on average I agree to pay $3. If I can just split these two genders and really focus on the gender that has a higher value, I can increase my CPI. Because at the end of the day, it's an ROI game, right? And then start to split all this matrix per very specific demographics, and actually that was what Facebook does. You can see in Facebook a $15, $20 CPI, just because for that specific target audience, it makes sense. So using less data, you can target a specific audience, thus the CPI will be lower for them to be positive on that. Thank you.